All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to walk through your ultimate mental checklist for a successful cross-country flight. If you're a student pilot gearing up for the big day, this is absolutely for you. We're going to take you step by step from the left seat, taking those standard procedures and making them second nature.
So you're getting ready for your first solo cross-country? That is a massive milestone. Up until now, you've probably been hanging out in the local training area, grinding through basic maneuvers, flying the pattern, practicing forced landings. But heading out to a distant airport? Well, that demands a completely new set of navigation skills and honestly, a much higher workload. You've got to be ready to manage weather, airspace, your navigation logs, all while actually flying the airplane.
Think of this as our master flight plan for the explainer. We'll be hitting departure and setting course, en route navigation strategies, managing in-flight diversions, what to do when you're lost, and finally, arrival and post-flight.
Okay, let's jump right into part one, departure and setting course. Let's get you off the ground, out of that traffic pattern, and locked on to your planned route.
Now, you don't just point the nose toward your destination and cross your fingers, right? After takeoff, you essentially have two main ways to set your heading. The easiest way? Just climb out and circle right back over the departure airport. When you're directly overhead, you make a mental note of your actual departure time. The other option is setting your heading en route, meaning you climb straight out to intercept your course. If you do it that way, you just have to do a little mental math backwards to estimate what your departure time over the field would have been.
The second you're established outbound, you need to run through these critical tasks. First, double-check that your heading indicator is perfectly aligned with the magnetic compass. Next, and I can't stress this enough, positively identify a solid, definite ground feature within your first 10 miles. Why? Because you want to catch any gross navigational errors right out of the gate. Trust me, misreading a compass happens way more often than anyone wants to admit. After that, log your actual time of departure and calculate those estimated arrival times.
Moving right along to part two, en route navigation strategies. We are at cruise altitude, everything is stable, so how do we make sure we stay exactly on that line? This visual beautifully illustrates your two primary navigation tool sets. Over on the left, we've got pilotage. That's flying by looking outside at visual references like lakes, towns, and train tracks to confirm your path. On the right side, that's contrasted with instrument tracking, where you're flying an intercept heading to catch a radial, like from a VOTAC, until that needle centers up. Now, modern planes have amazing GPS, for sure, but your true foundation has to be built on solid visual pilotage and dead reckoning.
While you're cruising, you've got to continuously calculate your actual ground speed. Look at the math right here. It's just time and distance between two fixes. So if you cover 5 nautical miles in 3 minutes, a quick mental calculation tells you you're doing 100 knots. Then, take that ground speed and mentally update your estimated time of arrival for your next checkpoint. A pro tip: log these times at the 1/4, 1/2, and 3/4 marks of your leg. It makes the updates an absolute breeze.
Let's be real, the winds aloft forecast is basically never perfect. So when you inevitably realize you're drifting off course, here is how you fix it without panicking. Step 1, recognize your tracking error. Step 2, calculate your closing angle. And step 3, alter your heading to smoothly rejoin your track. Ideally, you want to keep that airplane within 3 nautical miles of your planned route the entire time. If we look at this breakdown, it shows that the math really doesn't have to be intimidating. In this example, you find you have an 8-degree tracking error and a 4-degree closing angle. It's just simple addition. You turn 12 degrees to the right to intercept your line. Once you're back on the route, you take out that 8 degrees and just hold a 4-degree left correction to maintain it. Doing this math mentally keeps your eyes outside the cockpit, which is exactly where they need to be.
All right, part 3, managing in-flight diversions. Because sometimes changing weather or a mechanical gremlin means you simply cannot safely get to your destination. If the weather ahead starts looking nasty, like those thunderstorms popping up here, listen to me. Do not let get-there-itis take over. Making the call to divert early, purely in the name of safety, is the absolute hallmark of a great pilot. Your destination is never, ever worth pushing into an unsafe situation.
When you do decide to divert, pull up this methodical checklist. Rule number 1, fly the airplane. Maintain authoritative control. Keep your altitude pinned within 200 feet and your heading within 10 degrees. Then pick an alternate airport. If you can, start your turn from a really obvious ground feature. Fun fact, you can actually just use the width of your thumb on your sectional chart for a quick distance estimate. Finally, get on the radio and tell flight service or ATC what you're doing so they aren't left wondering where you went. Okay, part 4, what to do when you're lost. It is the scenario every single student pilot dreads, but I promise it's completely manageable if you stay calm and run the procedure. First, we need to understand the difference between two very different concepts. Being temporarily uncertain of your position is totally normal. It just means a landmark didn't show up out your window at the exact minute you expected. You can usually fix that right up by checking a VOR radial or spotting the next town. That is completely different from actually being lost, which usually happens because a whole chain of minor errors got ignored. But let's say it happens. You genuinely lose your bearings. The absolute worst thing you can do, the number one mistake, is abandon your heading and start flying around aimlessly, hoping you'll spot something familiar. Random maneuvering is just going to disorient you even more, and worse, it burns up your precious fuel. Instead, take a breath and execute this exact sequence. First, hold your heading and keep flying for 10% of the time since your last known fix. Second, verify your instruments. Make sure your heading indicator didn't drift away from your magnetic compass. And third, systematically draw out a most probable area on your map. Here's a brilliant visual trick for that. Take that 10% distance margin and draw an imaginary arc 30 degrees on either side of your estimated track. That wedge right there, that defines your search area. By boxing yourself in like this, you can stop panicking and start calmly looking from the ground down to your chart, matching up the big stuff like a major highway or a river, and pinpointing exactly where you are. And finally, part 5, arrival and post-flight. You've navigated the route, you've handled the curveballs, and your destination airport is right there in the windscreen. As you get close, smoothly switch gears to your arrival checklist. Grab the automated weather well before you hit the pattern. If it's an uncontrolled field, get on the CTAF 10 miles out and let everyone know what you're doing. And here's the kicker that trips up so many students. Once you land and park, you must actively call ATC or flight service to close your VFR flight plan. They don't do it automatically, and if you forget, you are literally going to trigger a search and rescue operation. Just as a final note on being totally prepared for this cross-country, make it a habit to mentally run through your emergency procedures before you even turn the key. Whether it's slamming in full carb heat the second you hear an RPM drop, or running the memory items for an electrical fire, having those locked in your brain means you're going to react instantly when every second counts. At the end of the day, a successful solo cross-country boils down to rigorous checklist discipline and staying miles ahead of the aircraft. It leaves you with one simple question to ask yourself today. Are you proactively commanding this flight, or are you just along for the ride? Review your checklists, trust your planning, and ask yourself, what is this first solo cross-country going to teach you about your own airmanship? Have a fantastic flight.